what what impact it's been having on the ability to kind of effectively manage schools when you're dealing also with a lot of political discussion that might not be strictly related to what you believe or don't believe should be going on in the schools. So I'd like to start with our challenger.
I think your question goes to 2 points: the cause of why this has occurred and the consequence of these actions. The cause, I believe, is there are parents and families in Florida and in Seminole County who do not feel that they are being supported. They feel that their rights are being taken away from them and that they do not have the ultimate say to educate their children. And that's why, because they're lacking that support on a local level, that they felt a need to go to Tallahassee to involve the legislative process to help get them back rights, which they should have sacrosanct. On a local level, the consequence of that has been that school administrations here in Seminole County have had school board meetings continually disrupted, and it has impeded the ability of district personnel to get on with the district business at hand. And that has allowed a number of things that should be being addressed to fall by the wayside. And I have great concerns about it.
School Board Member Kraus, if you'd like to address that.
Sure, I'm happy to try to address that. Thank you, first of all, for having us here today. So regarding the political involvement and the legislation that has been presented, first of all, I'd like to say that what is in the Parents' Bill of Rights was already in our school board policies. And I think with the pandemic and with homeschool and the stresses that families are feeling, it was overwhelming. And they didn't perhaps feel included. We had limited visiting in our campuses because we're trying to protect the health and safety of all staff. And because of that, I think there has bloomed a distrust. And it's my hope that we can encourage parental involvement at every level in our schools. Textbook selections, they've always been welcome to participate. Volunteering in the classroom, seeing firsthand one-on-one what our teachers are addressing. And I think, we will certainly always work within the law, what is required of us, and support our teachers and staff in the meanwhile, because I think they have a lot of questions. We're doing a lot of trainings recently with some of the new legislation.
Ms. Bauer, I was curious when you mentioned the several areas in which parents do not feel supported. I wasn't sure if Ms. Kraus addressed those directly, or if there are a couple of those that you could be more specific about, just very quickly.
Well, I mean, I could write a book on the ways in which parents don't feel they're being listened to in Seminole County, but I think the two main issues are they feel there's a lack of transparency with how the district is treating them when it comes to any time a request is being made for information. They're being forced to go through a very arduous Freedom of Information Act request process, something that should, depending on the complexity of the request, should take a fair and reasonable amount of time, but sometimes it's taking weeks and months to get these answers. And parents feel that they're being sidestepped or they're being obstructed. And I think that's increasing to the frustration that they have had to continue to build over the last 3 years. But the other issue that I really feel that students and parents are facing is they just don't feel welcome in the process. We learned a lot through the pandemic. We know a lot now more than we did before, but we also are facing the consequences of the decisions that were made of keeping parents, dividends, volunteers off of school campuses, keeping the schools closed as long as they were. And when it comes to that lack of support, I've talked to many parents who say they flat out don't feel welcome on school campuses. Many of them don't feel welcome at school board meetings. They feel like they're going to battle when they're going in to what should be a collaborative process so that we do the best that we can to give our students the best education possible.
One question I did have for you that's semi-related. What do you think is the biggest thing that you have learned through having to be a member and deal with schools and everything during the pandemic, because I know it's changed everything and thrown everything on its head. But what's one thing that you can say that you've learned as we hopefully exit the pandemic era?
Well, I would say that it was our priority to get our students back to class safely. And we were given advice from medical personnel, from our health department, from our emergency management people, that the best and safest way to get our students back learning in person at that time was to mask up. And so I did support that in order to get our schools open. What I've learned is perhaps not everyone believes in the science that was presented to us. It's ever evolving. I've also learned that there are some gaps in learning as a result. Not every student learns best virtually. There are some that excel. That's shown by our enrollment in Seminole County Virtual School, and they're doing quite well. We had 47 graduates this year that were virtual school, but not every student is equipped to do that. And so I think we need to be prepared if something like this happens again. Let's hope not. Let's hope it's a once in a lifetime event. But we were able to turn on a dime and get some learning in safely. And I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish, getting devices to all of our students, setting up hotspots with our community partners for students that didn't have the ability to access internet. And hopefully we won't have to do that ever again.
Dr. Bauer, did you want to address that?
I think that back when the pandemic started, we were told by the CDC that this is the best way to go. And at the time, administration made the best decision that they could. However, the consequences of that have been, and I tutor as a first grade reading tutor, 2 elementary schools. So I'm in the schools at Altamont Elementary and Sterling Park Elementary every week. I worked with the same first grader from start to finish in the school year. And I can tell you the number of students, including my 2 students that I was working with, that were reading under grade level, directly had reading detriments done to them because they were, number one, out of the classroom, but even once they got back into the classroom, masks were a problem for them. They were focusing more on keeping a mask over their face than focusing on learning to read and all of the things that go with reading, being able to sound things out, work on phonics, things that a 5 or 6-year-old can't focus on when they have a mask. And so that's why I don't support mandatory mask policies for when it comes to schooling. And should, God forbid, we be faced with something when it goes to having another spike in coronavirus, I would not be in support of doing that, because whatever benefit there was to the masks, it was outweighed by the outrageous damage that was done to our K-3 students. And I think the test scores in the district are showing that.
That actually is a place where I would like to follow up as well. Seminole County has for a long time enjoyed a fairly, solid A rating, good academic performance. And it does look from some early indicators as if this year might, the coming metrics might not be what people have come to expect. Do you believe that's the case, or do you, and if so, do you think that the district should start preparing parents for that news in the coming months? And I'd like to start with the incumbent.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
The SCPS rankings in our FSA scores, which are the current, now we have best standards, but those were the current tests that were given last year. In the 14th largest district, we ranked first and third grade ELA, first and fourth grade, first and fifth grade, second and sixth grade of the 14th largest district. English language arts is certainly the fundamental pathway for any learning. So it is a priority. We teamed with UCF and got books out in our bookmobiles to neighborhoods that may not have access to go to the libraries, those kind of things. And I believe the question is, are our rankings going to be impacted based on the experience that happened? So this next year will be a benchmark year with the best standards. We're going to start testing our pre-K through second graders the first 30 days. And it's based on the whole content of the whole year. So the scores, of course, initially will be, this is a picture of where this student is. And then we have, of course, curriculum that will build as the students go forth, and they will take 2 other tests throughout the year. And then in the older grades, they'll take end of course exams. So we're going to kind of compare apples and oranges next year based on our scores, but that's a given anytime the curriculum is updated or changed. I believe that we're strong based on the grades that we received this year. And it's the highest it's been in 5 years. So I think our standing is good, and I think we'll continue to build. We'll address the learning gaps where we see them. And I'm very hopeful for next year and the new best standards.
Dr. Bauer, did you want to
Yes,
follow up
ma'am.
on that?
I was just going to say our teachers in Seminole County are phenomenal, and they are doing more with less than teachers have ever been asked to do before. But quite frankly, the numbers say there's a problem, and I want better for our district, because when you look at the hard facts, 1 out of every 3 third graders cannot read at level. They cannot read. The number is higher than that when you go with the number of students in the district that are having to read with extreme assistance. Now, at a recent school board meeting, the district provided an update on the anticipated best standards for next year. And one of the questions that was asked is, despite the fact that the legislation was changed to reduce testing within the state of Florida, when the question was asked, will the district in Seminole County Public Schools, will our students next year, when you count the number of hours that the students are being tested, they are going to have more, less, or the same? And the answer was, despite the reduction in testing that has been mandated from the state level, next year we're anticipating our students will have the same number of test hours as they did in 2022 as what they're going to have in 2023. I think that's a real big problem, because when you have students that are locked to tests, that's when we don't have rooms for other things. I think active learning is crucial. We don't have room for things like field trips. And I teach American history at Valencia College. I've been teaching freshmen. I have almost 20 years of classroom experience working with students where, when our district is graduating them, they're coming into my classroom. And I can tell you, the vast majority of them are not prepared. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. And they are basically insulated in a world of grade inflation. When you tell them that there is no such thing as a weighted grade in a college prep classroom for those students that are going on to college, although not all students should, vocational education is just as great for the right student if you find the right program for the right fit. They are not being prepared by our district. And I'm seeing that in my classroom, and students are failing on the college level. So we're not doing right by them. And I think we can do better.
Seminole County does offer several alternative, vocational, career-oriented, I think is maybe a better way to describe it, where students leave high school well on their way to a professional certificate, a career, sometimes a college degree. What opportunities do you see in the coming months or in the coming years for Seminole County to expand on these kinds of offerings? They've proven wildly popular.
One of the things that I'm most proud of is I am actually a product of Seminole County Public Schools. More than, I'm not going to say how many years ago, but many years ago, I was one of the students going through this process of trying to figure out how to become educated in Seminole County. And I was very blessed because I was able to go to school at a time when Seminole County was just expanding some of these programs and opportunities. One of the earliest ones we started with the EMS, which has now become the Health Academy, Seminole High School. It's been expanded to wonderful things. What's going on at Lyman High School with the engineering magnet is fantastic. Del Air just recently partnered with the district to show what you can do with trade certificates. I would like to see more public-private collaboration, but I think expanding magnets is the way to go when it comes to figuring out how to best prepare our students and give them opportunities. I really like the idea of continuing to expand our partnership with Seminole State College, particularly when it comes for some of the different trade certifications that are available, not necessarily an associate's-based or a bachelor's-based track through the community college, but I think that can be expanded on. And like I said, trade is great, college is great. It just depends on what best fits the individual students and what they need.
And if I might speak to that, I'm the mom of 4 students who went through the public school system. And when they started school, so did I. I started volunteering, learning about the opportunities in our district. And I have my oldest son, who is a product of a trade school. He went to a program at Siemens Gamesa for wind turbine repair. He started off in a community college, and that wasn't the right fit for him, and changed pathways, and now is traveling the world repairing wind turbines. Our youngest son went to Croom's Academy of Information and Technology and received 4 Microsoft certifications. He could have walked out of high school employed in any of our technology fields. He continued on at Stetson University, and then is working for a company outside of Maryland, working virtually, because all young people seem to be doing that these days. I understand and appreciate college is not for everyone. We need to encourage those students who may not think that that's an opportunity for them, and encourage them to take rigorous coursework where they can, to believe in them, to support them. We are offering the PSAT, the SAT, and ACT to our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, just to have a foundational understanding of where they are, where their strengths are. I believe we also need to encourage more opportunities for career, the partnerships that we do when we have teach-in days and career exploration. I think that would be helpful. I would love to see more green energy offerings. Winter Springs currently has environmental sciences, a fabulous program, but they're doing a lot with solar, with recycling. But I'd like to see that expand, because I think that's what our business partners are telling us, the number 1 and 2 employers. And I think that's definitely one of my priorities, looking at expanding some of our vocational offerings for our students.
Thank you. I wanted to ask really quickly about the issue of school safety, because I know that's come to the forefront recently with incidents in Texas and incidents not in schools, just all over the country. But I wanted to ask, is Seminole doing enough to protect students in schools, and what can be done to improve that? What specific thing would you be able to accomplish as a member and as a board? Ms. Kraus, I'll start with you.
Well, obviously there's some information that I know that I'm not able to share just because of safety. But I will tell you, in speaking with Sheriff Lima over the weekend, we are sort of the trailblazers with threat assessments. Ours have been adopted by our state government as the example of what other districts should be doing. Sheriff Lima and our sheriff's department, we have a great relationship. We have at least 1 SRO on every campus. Many have 2 or 3. We have mental health counselors that support them. It would be my goal to have one mental health counselor at each and every one of our schools. So the waiting time for our students isn't 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that they can meet with someone as soon as they need to. We are doing an excellent job with the hardening of our schools. There is always room for improvement. And I also believe we need to look at different opportunities. I don't support more guns on schools, certainly not arming our teachers or staff. And for example, I went to this UCF incubator program, and these 2 men were given a grant to develop tethered drones, and they were hoping to market to Disney or Universal, but the drones are literally tethered throughout. They would be throughout a campus, and we're monitoring cameras anyway. So why couldn't we have cameras on these drones and monitor, courtyards, areas that are not always, visited. Our staff stand outside the doors. They do everything they can to meet the students, to understand what kind of day they're having and encourage a better day. So there's always room for improvement, but I think our district can know that we're doing very good work, and thanks to our sheriff's department, we have a collaboration.
Dr. Bauer, what do you think of this issue, and what response do you have?
So one of the biggest things when I talk to teachers about what their frustrations are, aside from the fact that they don't think they're being paid enough, and they aren't, is that they are having to deal with discipline problems both inside and outside the classroom, because students have become more disrespectful, they have become more aggressive, and they've become more problematic in the number of fights that are breaking out on school campuses, especially our middle and high schools. I think that when you look at the statistics, despite the fact that we have a zero tolerance policy in Seminole County, that if you touch a teacher, you're gone, or you should be gone, that students they don't have concerns about discipline if they're going to have to face consequences for the discipline. I think when you couple that with the fact that our absenteeism is amongst some of the highest that it has been in our history, when you look at truancy ratings, the question then becomes, where are the students going, and why have our fights increased if students are absent from class? And the answer is being shown that students are actually going to school, but they're leaving the classroom and going to areas where they shouldn't be. They're going into hallways, they're going into bathrooms, they're vandalizing things, they're having fights. And that's where the majority of our problems are happening. I think that has let a culture of complacency develop, so that students who should be on campus to learn, that is their primary objective, now are being tempted by other things that are very negative. Things like gangs. We have a gang problem here in Seminole County. Many years ago, there was a gang task force that was organized under Sheriff Esslinger that had great success in getting rid of the majority of gang presence in the southeastern and South Seminole portion of the county. That has spiked again because we no longer have that task force active in this part of the county. We also have incredible problems with drugs on our campus. And students are bringing drugs and weapons to school because they think that they can get away with it. And so one of the models that I really like, and I think that would help to take some of the pressure off of teachers, because if teachers are having to play babysitter, if they're having to play hall monitor when they're supposed to be teaching, they can't teach our students. They get burned down for doing something that's not a part of their job. I think that's when you bring in more dividends. Just having someone in a hallway during a lunch change, and this is something that South Seminole Academy, actually I was talking to the principal there, and I heard her give a presentation on this where she said when they were having lunches, they had teachers and volunteers go out and just move their desks next to bathrooms. And if teachers were just in the hallway, sitting there doing their grading, what they would be doing on their normal plan period, and the teachers were present and being seen, the students would suddenly not go to the bathroom, do anything other than what you should be doing in a bathroom. And that's a very cost-effective way that the teachers and dividends were happy to do, that I think is a model that could be implemented cheaply, effectively, and have significant results in the district almost instantaneously.
we are actually close to the time that we have allotted for this. I wanted to ask each of you one quick question. If you could just give me a very rapid assessment, and then after that, we will ask you both to give us brief statements about your candidacy. But first, I would like to ask each of you, and starting with School Board Member Kraus, what are you satisfied with the performance of Superintendent Sarita Beeman? And if not, are there places where you specifically believe that there needs to be improvement? And also, just what are her strengths?
It's difficult to do quickly, but Miss Beeman, Superintendent Beeman, has provided a 100-day plan that when she retired and she met all the goals of that plan, she has held 14 safety and security meetings with our community, which is something that she had promised to do. She has held a multitude of sessions. There's youth. She goes into the high schools, and the leadership team and others present students from throughout the school, and she meets with them to hear from them what is going well, what is not going well. I do think her style of communication is a little slower than I would like. And I will be talking with her about that. I think that she wants all of the facts and information before she shares it either with the community or with the public. But communication, I think, is one area that I would say we can use some work, but all of us can, of course, improve. She's only 1 year on the job. I think she's done a very good job.
Dr. Bauer?
I think when you look at the search process that resulted in the hiring of Mrs. Beeman, to say it was problematic from the beginning is an understatement. However, district leadership has to move past the process of how Mrs. Beeman came to be superintendent and judge her based on her actions in the past year. And I think the simple statement is, if you're going to evaluate that, is when you compare SCPS schools with what they are in 2022, compared with where they were a year ago when she took over, is the district better off? And I don't think it is. I think our test scores are showing that. I think the fact that our teachers are not being, they are not happy with how things are going when it comes to their responsibilities and their compensation. And to be quite honest, I know a great majority of the public is not a fan of how Mrs. Beeman acts. I think that you have to set the tempo from the top. And when you're looking at reducing instead of increasing redundancy in leadership positions, trying to save taxpayer money by not paying the same number of administrators for the same number of jobs, that's been a big problem because we've ballooned our budget. Our budget is something that we are going to have issues with. Bad times are coming. Bad economic times are coming. We've flush in cash right now, but tough decisions are going to have to be made. And I don't believe that taxpayers in Seminole County should have to have their taxes raised because SCPS Schools is the largest taxing authority in all of Seminole County. And if we're not wise with how we're spending our money and instead spending on an inflated administrative top-heavy staff, then that's going to be a very real possibility. And I have big problems with that.
Well, and then I guess I would just ask each of you in a minute or two just to kind of sum up your pitch for why Seminole County voters should choose you for this district seat.
So I believe I have the courage to stand up for our children and for parental rights. I very much support bringing students back into the classroom as valued partners in the journey of educating their children because they're only loaning the district our children during the day. Ultimately, parents must have the ability to be final say on how and what their children are taught. People come to Seminole County for the schools. We have to give them reasons to stay once they get here. And I think we need to increase things like transparency. I want to see a scrubbing of SCPS's budget. I would like to see a salary study increased and instituted next year to find out if we're paying our teachers, support staff, bus drivers, and substitutes a fair wage. And I'd like to find out if enough assets are being used effectively, like possibly renting our sports field for additional revenue so we don't have to raise taxes. But the bottom line is this: our county, your county, is a great place to raise a family, and I need your help. If I'm going to get elected, I need your support, and I'm hoping you'll let me earn your vote on August 23rd. Vote number 1 in District 1.
School Board Member Kraus?
Well, I too would like to thank the editorial board for hosting this. It has been my extreme honor to serve our community. I am student focused, family focused. I recognize these are your most prized possessions, and I don't take any of that for granted. We have work to do, but I will say that I believe the majority of the residents of Seminole County move here as a result of our fantastic schools. We are a premier national school district. I intend to do everything in my power to continue that great legacy. And I would appreciate your vote on August 23rd. Kristine Kraus for school board. Thank you.
I very much thank you for your time and your focus. And I know that being a candidate is one of the hardest jobs out there. And so I really do appreciate you taking the time to spend with us.